So, the extended mind. This is week 12, these two readings. I'm surprised I didn't assign the Dora and Harnad to anybody. I was sure I had. So it's the same question, what is cognition, except this time the question is, where is it located? And what is it that's distributed? If you have a distributed mind, what is distributed? Is the fact that the brain is not at point mass, does that mean that cognition is distributed? Is that a form of distributed cognition, the fact that it's not? Is this distributed cognition? A whole bunch of ideas, minds, maybe even static likes distributed across the library, which a lot of people come in and use. Is that distributed cognition? I mean, if you use it really loosely, I mean, then we could have been talking about distributed cognition in Gutenberg days. Surely that isn't what we mean or ought to mean when we're asking these questions. Is this distributed cognition? They're batting stuff back and forth with words at a distance. Is this distributed cognition? Things like groupthink. There's 6 heads around this table. How many minds are around this table, and where are they? As I said before, is this distributed cognition when you have certain areas that are active and other areas that are not active? And then, of course, there's this. Is this part of the thing that's cognizing, even though it's not part of the body? So really, what is an extended mind? When people talk about it, this is now that we know that the components of extended mind are sitting right there. I have to say I'm totally befuddled by all of this because I don't even know what it could mean. Since I insisted on substituting all of those weasel words, those 30 weasel words by feeling, extended feeling? These are mind extenders, right? I mean, with glasses I can see further. With microscopes I can see smaller. With telescopes I can see way further. Isn't that an extension of my mind? It's not just sensory, it's also motor. Bicycles, cars, airplanes, robotic stuff, even stilts. Body extenders, and they extend what I can do with my body, so are they extended minds? And then, of course, there's virtual reality, where I'm interacting with digital generated stuff that looks as if it's real objects, but it's not. Is that an extended mind, and where does the mind start and where does the mind stop? What about even more technological stuff, an abacus, a typewriter, and a computer? They're clearly mind extenders in the loose sense that they allow you to do more things. But is it anything more than that? Any more than, for example, stilts are body extenders, but they certainly don't extend your mind. What about Google and the internet and Wikipedia? Is this Julian Assange? I'm not sure. No. Okay, it looks like him a little. Yeah, but his hair changed color. Who knows? Well, anyway, so the question I ask in the paper is, maybe the intuition pump you need when you're asking about whether something is or isn't an extended mind is to substitute for mind feeling and for mind being a feeler, something that's capable of feeling, and the feeling is what the feeler feels. And the question is, can that feeling be distributed? And can the entity that's feeling that feeling be distributed wider than a head? Can a committee, as part of groupthink, a group migraine, God, we have a headache today with this. Is there a headache, or is that just a way of speaking? Of course, we're always stuck on this notion of consciousness. What's consciousness and what's the end of it? And we just heard that there's no end to it, or it's actually just sort of it's just a mirror on a world consciousness, like bigger than Gaia. It's sort of the whole cosmos. And then, of course, along with the pen and pencil, you have external memory like that. And the point that was brought up by Mike, which is absolutely correct, is you also have internal memory. If the external memory is not part of your mind, then why is the internal memory part of your mind? There's a simple rule for all of this. If you're willing to restrict mental to felt and feeling, the only part that's the only physical stuff that's part of your mind is the physical stuff that is part of being able to feel, and it's that physical stuff that's doing the feeling. And I think we agreed. Even Nick said that that group of 6 people, when the committee has a headache, doesn't really have a headache. Was I right? Were you nodding that they don't have a headache? No headache. So they don't feel something. There's no such thing as a distributed. Remember the situation with Searle, right? With Searle reading stuff off the paper, there was sort of an ambiguity about who's doing what where. But once he memorized all of the stuff, we could start saying sensible things like, does he or doesn't he understand Chinese? And people couldn't answer weird extended mind answers like, no, he doesn't understand Chinese, but the room does, because the room consists of him plus a rule book plus a, right? The feeler is Searle, and because the feeler is Searle, the mind is Searle's, Searle is the authority with Cartesian certainty to say he doesn't understand Chinese. I just want to remind you that for most of your cognition is stuff that is not mental in this sense, right? The part that you're aware of and the times that you feel and what part of your brain is active when you're feeling is a minuscule part of what's going on in there. Now, talking loosely, you can say, look, it's happening in my brain. Let's not be pedantic about what's mental. It's all mental. Well, yeah, if you're being really loose. But remind yourself that if it were all tacit or implicit knowledge, in other words, if we were zombies just doing, then none of it would be mental. So the only reason we can be loose about these unconscious processes going on in our heads as being mental is because we are feelers, and somehow, in the end, parts of them at least can become felt or are felt. I'm not saying, though, that the thing that Mike brought up isn't relevant, that if you pair off all of this stuff, you mean that maybe there's a sort of a core of organisms, and you know, I have a feeling it is a kind of a core organism. I think probably it was, I don't know about invertebrates, but certainly very low vertebrates that were already feeling. And then all this other stuff was just T3 capacities built up on top of a basic feeling, on top of a mind. A mind that became more and more capable. I'm not saying that these things in your head as well as outside your head, technology outside your head, doesn't increase your capabilities. That's why I asked whether it's a different Turing test. They increase your capacities, but it's the same Turing test. You are the kind of thing that is capable of having your capacities increased by having Google as an add-on. We're talking about shared nervous systems, shared bodies, and whether you can also have shared feelings. And then the question is, what about split brain? Well, let me tell you the most interesting. What is the most interesting neuropsychological disorder? What's your favorite one or whatever? My favorite. That's awful. What? Synesthesia? It's close. I think neglect is close, but there's something that's even more interesting than neglect, and it's the essence of neglect. What did you say? Did you say?
I was just saying.
Are you thinking like split brain?
No, there is, but I have to discuss split brain. I have to mention.
There's also when someone their cortex is.
So the most interesting neuropsychological disorder is definitely anosognosia, and that's the unawareness of your ailment, whatever it is. And it's related to denial, and neglect is a mild form, and denial, etc. And it's amazing, and in some ways, think about it. When I showed you the slide about the tiny bit of your mental processes that are conscious and the huge iceberg underneath it isn't, and we're not aware of it. We think we're running the whole show. It's all anosognosia. Now, in the case of the split brain, what you have is this. You'd say, oh, do you have 2 minds in the body? Let's talk to each of them, and let's have do you know what the other one is doing, and are you the same person, etc. You can't do that because, for one thing, only one of them talks, right? But you can present things, say, to the hand. You present things. You present it to a half field that only goes to one side, and then you ask the subject to point where both hemispheres can see to the object that was presented. And if you ask them to point with the left hand, they'll point to one object. And if they say it, it's another object, because the talking brain saw one thing, and I'm talking about a picture that is split, and it's half this and half that, and one hemisphere sees one. But what happens when you ask the person? Well, they confabulate, which is anosognosia. Gazzaniga had a terrific example of that. I can't remember the details, but it was something to do with half of the thing was a chicken and half of the thing was a shovel, right? So first he points to the he asks him what it is, and he says it's a chicken, and then he says, but you're pointing to the shovel, and he says, well, that's to sweep up the chicken shit, right? He quickly tells a story that makes, and it's like the professor who says, I guess you're right. Okay, there's something funny going on there. Okay, so there are two modules active, and they get different inputs, but that's normal. I mean, there's some things that I can feel with my left hand and not feel with my right hand, etc. And one of them has access to speech and the right hand, and the other one has access only to the left hand. And that's about as much as I can say. It's kind of like what I said about the way they handle quantum mechanics. Is it a particle or is it a wave? Never mind. If you look at it this way, it acts like a particle. Look at it that way, it acts like a wave. Same thing here. Are there really two minds in the brain there? Or is it just one mind that kind of can do some things and not others? I would say the chicken shit confabulation is evidence of the fact that there's more going on in there, right? And the brain is kind of resolving it, because that's what it's designed to do. It's designed so you don't miss. The reason I say life is anosognosia is because you don't focus on what's missing. You focus on what's there. And what I suggest is that it's not that cognition is distributed, it's just that cognitive technology extends our capacities.
But I guess what's like,
as far as I'm concerned, the biggest piece of cognitive technology in the history of our species was language. And that was in this transition that we talked about, the magic transition. And that's what made it possible for us to get all of the knowledge that we have, which consists mostly of categories, by this new technology, shared technology, the technology is distributed enough. The mind's just as, the feeler's just as unitary as it ever was. Now, this is the last week. April 8th will be the final. Instead of, what do we agree on? Instead of 8 questions, we're going to do 6 questions out of, should I still give you 6 out of 8? That's 2. No, if you're going to only do 6, I should give you 15 to choose it out of. Is that fair? Okay. 2 to 3 hours. The questions will be multi-topic this time. And I want you to try to make connections and integrate, but do it in a kid-sibly way. Please do the course of, who's already done the course evaluations? Please, the rest of you, and especially the ones who have done CogSci before, and, well, either way, whether you believe it, whether you feel that way or not, if you think there wasn't an overlap, please say there wasn't. Who did CogSci? Okay.
And Kate.
Okay. Could you?
I held off because I thought, what if there was a train wreck today?
Okay. Yeah, right. Because I like I say, this is a freebie for McGill, but I want to get students, and I don't want them to be prevented from going because they're taking some other course. And you can still do more post-postings, and in those post-postings, unlike the previous ones which were focused on the one question, practice doing connections between things, between the concepts.